we've seen a bunch of different narratives come and go over the over the last couple of months. The first of which was like this whole DPEG event with like USDC, right?
Right.
And that sort of highlighted the need, like all of these people like relying on, basically everybody's relying on USDT, USDC, and to some extent DAI right now, which is also backed by USDC partly, right?
Right.
So all of these people are like right now are betting and using their primary means of payment in crypto, which should be a decentralized space, and using something that's completely centralized. And then finally there was this scare event, right?
Right.
With the whole banking thing crisis going on, and then liquidity crisis, and some of the money was stuck, right? That USDC kept in the bank, and then suddenly people saw, oh, is this DeFi? Like, it's not really DeFi if you're using stable coins that are completely dependent on some centralized system, and it has all sorts of regulatory risks. So that was like one of the, we were already building the product at the time, but that was like, it kind of validated our entire vision that we were building towards. Yeah.
Welcome to Mission DeFi with Brad Nickel, where we explore projects in decentralized finance that are innovating and driving our mission of financial freedom forward. Thank you for listening. If you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, and review Mission DeFi and spread the word by posting a tweet to the show. All opinions expressed by Brad Nickel or his guests are their opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Black Knox, Material Indicators, or any other affiliated organizations. You should not treat any opinion expressed by Brad Nickel or his guests as an inducement to make a particular investment, follow a particular strategy, or become involved with any project. A project being featured on the show is not an endorsement of that project in any way. This podcast is for informational purposes only. Now, here's Mission DeFi with Brad Nickel.
All right, I'm excited today because I've got David Garai from Raft, and David has already created an innovative platform in the space, and has now created a new product around that project that's called Raft that looks really interesting and like a really good opportunity. So David, thanks for joining us. If you could give everybody like a brief intro to you, where you're from, what you've been doing, how you got here, all that good stuff.
Yeah, sounds good. Hey, Brad. Thanks for having me again on the podcast. Appreciate it. Yeah, I can do a quick intro about myself. So my name is David Garai. I actually come from like a legal background. So I used to be a lawyer. I went to university in the UK, and then I did like a training contract at one of the big law firms in London, moved over to Tokyo, worked at yet a different law firm for a couple of years. I did mostly like derivatives and structured finance, which was a interesting time, especially, combine Japan with the legal work. And then I was working like 16-hour days every day. Crazy backstory. And then sort of like when COVID started, or even before COVID started, I left that and sort of started at a different DeFi project as sort of like a head of operations. Then after that, we came together with my co-founder and started Tempus, which was, and to this day still is, a fixed income project on Ethereum. The way that worked is like it's you can deposit your compound interest-bearing tokens or other like lending tokens or stake ETH, and then you could get a fixed yield on it, or you can speculate on the future yield. So if you think the yield will go up, you can take a bet on that, or if you think the yield will go down, you can just fix your yield, and then you continue to get that fixed 4-point-something%. So it kind of catered to people with different risk appetites. We've been working on that project for, we were talking for more than a year, but then as sort of the DeFi yields collapsed and the interest rates in the traditional finance world went up, we decided that there's no product market fit there because people didn't really want to fix a 0.5% yield on compound, right? Like it didn't really make too much sense if it's like 0.5 variable, or if it's a 0.5 fixed or 0.4 fixed, because like at that point, like it didn't really.
That's painful, man.
Yeah,
I get it.
exactly.
That's brutal.
Yeah, so back in the day when like compound yields were like 20%, because like there was so much money pouring into the space, and it was like speculating, and markets were going up like crazy. At that point, there was like a great opportunity, but then sort of like when the yields sort of started to go down, suddenly that appetite went away. So what we decided to do is we rebranded Tempus into a multi-product studio that builds multiple products, not just focused on this one product and stay razor focused on the fixed income side, but instead we wanted to use our existing resources to branch out into different products and build not just this thing that didn't have product market fit at the time, but also deeper feed into different product lines that have greater potential, so you can use our existing resources in a better way.
Nice. I like that. What's interesting is this is not a market that's easy to pivot in, right? So
No,
it's not.
Yeah, most teams stay in like one place, right? So they like,
Yeah,
if they start to build something, they raise money for it, then there's no way they leave. They don't pivot into a different place. They kind of just stay in that razor focused, sharp on that one thing, even though it should be written off at that point, right? So we were like, okay, let's go for it. It's a difficult decision, especially since you have a large team. You have more than 20 people. So in order to get everybody on board and make sure that everybody follows the new vision, is not an easy thing to do internally either. But like ultimately, everybody sees that it's for the best, and then everybody's happy about it. So that's what happened on our side too. So it's completely fine.
Yeah. Well, it takes first, you're kind of out there, you've presented this brand, you have people using something, or maybe some community involved, engaged, whatever. And it's not an easy thing to do. And then just technically, normally the idea of pivoting is, well, that's not true. A lot of pivots are something completely new, but sometimes it's less of a pivot and more of just minor changes to functionality, which is difficult from a technical perspective. But in this case, I really like this model of, hey, we've got, a top-notch development team. We understand this tech. We've built in this space. And if we turn this into a studio where we can create and crank out products that we believe the market needs, it's great. And the other side of that is that product will have a use again in the bull market, next bull market, right?
Yeah,
so
exactly. And it's ready, and it's done, and it's like ready to be deployed again whenever we set up new pools, and then suddenly market a little bit, and then suddenly it has a use case straight away. So we have worked on it in the sense like we have built a new UI for it in the meantime. We have improved our analytics page. We have done a lot of simplification of the UI side, so it's really easy for people to just like get a fixed yield. You just put in your staked ETH in there, and then bam, you're like, you're farming at a fixed yield over the next 1 year in like a single transaction. So it can be really simple for people, and we've made those improvements already. But yet again, like it's not the right time to put all of our existing resources into that. So that's how we came to this new thing, right? Like Raft is like the primary product that we're working on right now, and we've seen a bunch of different narratives come and go over the last couple of months. The first of which was like this whole DPEG event with like USDC, right?
Right.
And that sort of highlighted the need. Like all of these people, like relying on, basically everybody's relying on USDT, USDC, and to some extent DAI right now, which is also backed by USDC partly, right?
Right.
So all of these people are like right now are betting and using their primary means of payment in crypto, which should be a decentralized space, and using something that's completely centralized. And then finally there was this scare event, right?
Right.
With the whole banking thing crisis going on, and then liquidity crisis, and some of the money was stuck, right? That USDC kept in the bank, and then suddenly people saw, oh, is this DeFi? Like it's not really DeFi if you're using stablecoins that are completely dependent on some centralized system, and it has all sorts of regulatory risks. So that was like one of we were already building the product at the time, but that was like, it kind of validated our entire vision that we were building towards.
Yeah. I have constantly complained over and over again that any protocol, any stablecoin that has a backdoor to blacklist things is not exactly decentralized, right? So it's a threat to the ecosystem. And I'm not any kind of maximalist on any level of anything, but we can't make the bet on that. And the problem is all of the other algorithmic stablecoins all have a huge dependency on USDC because USDC was smart enough or lucky enough to come in at the time of DeFi summer and the collapse of other products to actually swoop in and become the primary stablecoin of DeFi, which is a critical component. So I think you're right. I think the timing couldn't have been better for you guys to have those things happen, and for people to start to kind of say, wait a minute, this is not what we necessarily need, right? It opens the eyes of people that haven't been thinking about these things. So that's fantastic. All right, so tell us the concept of Raft, how it came about, and then let's get into how it functions, and why you guys think it's a superior model. I love that there's a lot of staked ETH involvement in the way this thing functions. But go ahead and give us the kind of overview, elevator pitch guide of what you guys have built and are building.
Sounds good. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I can do that. So Raft is a protocol that lets you take out loans of R, our native stablecoin, single letter coin, which doesn't really exist anywhere, but we were like, okay, let's go for it.
Yeah, I like it.
Which is called R, right? So R is our stablecoin, and you can take out a loan of R against staked ETH collateral. So what you can do is you can deposit, let's say, $10,000 worth of staked ETH into our smart contracts, keep the entire staking yield. So we don't skim off the top, right? So you keep the entire staking yield, and then you can borrow our native stablecoin R against it for completely free, right? We have gone with the approach of like making the protocol free for users in the beginning, similar to what Uniswap did, with their fee model, to make sure that it scales to like a great level of adoption. And then later on, once it gains adoption, then we can discuss and have a discussion about putting a actual borrowing fee on it. So the benefit of it is like what's happening here. I mean, a good way to conceptualize it is like you have staked ETH, the value of that should be going up, over time because you keep getting the staking yield. And what you're doing through the protocol is you're subdividing that staked ETH into dollar-sized chunks, right? And then you get the dollar-sized chunks out, and then you can use it across DeFi. You can use it for whatever you want, and the staked ETH keeps burning in the background, right? One of the approach the difference here with a bunch of other stablecoins out there like Frax or DAI is that R is a single collateral stablecoin, right? So there's no other types of collateral there. There's no USDC. There's no stability module that lets you swap it for USDC and to maintain the peg. It's all maintained by just the staked ETH and the hard peg and soft peg models that we have to make sure that the price stays at like $1.
Okay, so what you're saying is basically because you have this one thing ETH that's staked ETH, you can maintain that price correlation to $1 and the value of that, because you're just issuing it against the ETH that people are staking, right, and putting it in the market.
That's right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, that's right. So that's what we're doing. It's like go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just saying, like it's the model that we kind of promise to people is that one R is always redeemable for $1 worth of staked ETH, right? So we maintain the dollar on the bottom side. We maintain the peg by allowing redemptions to happen. So what happens there is that if the price of R goes below $1, then you can redeem somebody else's collateral, and you can take $1 worth of staked ETH for that 1R, sell it, and then that will make the price go back to $1. So this way we always keep the promise that one R will always be redeemable for $1 worth of staked ETH.
That's awesome. If I'm staking ETH and I get to still earn my my ETH that I earn for staking it, is that does that become reflected in the value of what I have staked? Or does that come out separately to me into my wallet? In other words, does that help improve the value of what I have in to reduce the liquidation risk for what I have?
Yeah, it does. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So what we do is we take, the collateral that the contract uses is Rafts staked ETH. So basically, the number of the Rafts staked ETH that you have that's locked remains constant, but the value of it keeps going up because it accrues the staking yield. So in the background, you keep earning the yield. So the position's value should be going up, and your risk of liquidation should be going down as a result.
Right.
So it improves your borrowing position as time goes on, you know.
Yeah, barring a complete collapse in the price of ETH or any
Yeah,
something
exactly.
like that.
Yeah. But you know, you're always going to be at a provided that the markets function well and staked ETH, you know, provided that, you know, that there's no other risks with staked ETH, so the price doesn't detach from ETH itself. You're always going to be better off by using staked ETH as collateral, as if you were just using ETH, because the value should be going up consistently compared to ETH. So you're always at a slightly better position, but there's always price risk, obviously, because the ETH position can fluctuate, and it's up to every user to make sure that they're staying within the limits so that they're not liquidated.
Yeah, and what are the limits that somebody can come in and borrow against Raft with? I mean,
so the collateralization ratio is very low, so it's 110%.
Wow.
The way that we can achieve that is that by using instant liquidations instead of using, for example, MakerDAO's model, which is the auction model, right? Which takes a little bit longer. So they have a longer period over which they liquidate, and the user will not be liquidated for their entire position. What the compromise that we have taken is that you can stay closer to the 110%, but once you cross that, basically you lose the excess collateral. So you lose that 10%, and because your position gets taken out immediately. This is just to incentivize that liquidations take place, because we don't have a lot of buffer, right? It's just only 10%. So all the liquidations are instant.
Right. So, but you're saying it's only shaving off the liquidation level to get you to 100% again.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That's
okay.
Right.
That's cool. I like that. And I think,
yeah.
I think the average user appreciates that model rather than everything.
Yeah, exactly. I think like there's more risk once you get like to the low level, but if you know, we're 120, 130, you can easily keep an eye on it and say, oh, you know, like if there's a big dump on the day, like 20% down, you just like make sure that, you know, you're still within the bounds, and then nothing bad happens, and you'll be fine. And this is what actually allows us to go and get you leverage on your staked ETH. So one of the primary use cases where you're going to see here is basically there's this, like, you know, the whole staking narrative and everything else. There are a lot of people, and there's a lot of appetite for people to leverage up on their staked ETH, right? Because they want to get either they want to, you know, they're just long on ETH and they want to be more long. And this allows them to be long on staked ETH, not just the ETH asset itself. So that basically multiplies your staking yield at the same time as you get a multiple times exposure to the delta as well.
Right.
So because it's only 110% collateralization ratio, right? People can leverage up to 11x using this platform. Right. And if you contrast that with like Aave or Maker, that's only like 2.5 to 3.5x maximum. So it caters to a different audience as well. And then the beautiful thing about it is that you can do it in a single transaction, right? So you don't have to deposit and then borrow again, swap again, redeposit, right, borrow again, and fold. Because of the system that we designed that uses like flash mint of R, the stablecoin, you can basically do this in a single transaction. So you can do it in like one go. You can deposit your staked ETH. You just select the multiplier. You just say, oh, I want 5x.
Right.
Pull the slider, execute, done. You see your liquidation price. You see everything. You see your new staking yield that accrues as a result. So if you're, 5x leverage is like 20% yield, but in exchange, you're gonna be liquidated if the price goes to like, I don't know, $1,200. Right. So it's like a, so that sort of should cater to a big audience. What we've seen is like MakerDAO in Maker and in Aave, I think collectively there's like 2 million staked ETH that's being deposited this way for this purpose. So you can see like there's like billions of dollars of appetite to do this.
Yeah.
And we just make it way easier for people, Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, just for everybody listening that maybe hasn't familiar with kind of lending and borrowing in this space and what you mean by 5x or 11x, the basic concept is typically in these protocols like this, you would come in, you would lend, let's say in this case, the staked ETH, and then you would get the R, and then you would swap it for more staked ETH, and then you would stake the staked ETH, you would borrow, blah, 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 and you keep repeating that cycle. You guys are just automating that. You're like, let's cut out the extra steps. We'll do all of that for you. You tell me the level that you want to get to, 5x, 3x, 10x, 11x, and we'll take care of it all in one swoop, right? So you're maximizing what you had. That's great. That's I think that's a really smart model. In terms of kind of how you're approaching this, for you guys, is this a model of, did it start off as a model of, hey, we want to put out a better stablecoin, or did it start off as a model of, we want to create a better lending protocol?
I think it started as a stable coin, but at the same time, we realized that there is so much appetite just for that. The protocol can be used for, I would say it has two different use cases, right? As you summed it up, like one of it is just like the stable coin, right? Just using the stable coin for multiple purposes. You borrow for free, right? Keep your staking yield. If you're long ETH, like you just take the money, use it for whatever, farm, buy NFTs, like buy a house, right? You can do
Right.
whatever you want with it. And then you pay back later, right? And then you don't pay, there's no borrowing fee. If you want to borrow in TradFi right now, it's like, I don't know how much it's going to cost you. It's like 5%, 6%, whatever it is.
Right.
So what I would like to see is actually real life applications for people to, they put the staked ETH in and they use that as collateral to buy a house or buy a car and then repay it from their salary, right? Just swap it back into R and then repay it while the collateral is a productive asset. So they keep earning on that. So that's like the stablecoin itself, the stablecoin side. So you have a stablecoin that's like decentralized and then native, and it's not backed by any sort of fiat-backed stablecoin. So it's just like a completely decentralized stablecoin. On the one side, this was the primary sort of vision for the protocol. But then we realized that because of the correlation ratio requirements and all these innovations that we came up with in the flash minting side and everything else, we can offer this product at the same time that allows people to just leverage up on their staked ETH and do so through a very primitive, easy UI, because there's so much appetite based on the numbers that we see in like Maker and Aave.
Yeah, no, and there's an appetite for staking Ethereum, right? And this whole LSD market. And in terms of this, I mean, I started angling in my head as you were talking about it, the payback model. So right now there'll be no interest, there'll be no fees. It's just come in and the liquidation is all automated. This isn't human liquidations where somebody has to come in and initiate the liquidation.
No, so the liquidations will be handled through liquidation bots that will run ourselves, and also our partners will run it in the beginning. But it's also an open source thing, so anybody who wants to participate in liquidations or redistributions or anything like that will be able to just run their own bot or run whatever, and it's going to be a free market model. So the liquidation profits will go to whoever liquidates first. So we just want to make sure that we democratize it as much as possible to make sure that liquidators actually compete with each other, so that liquidations always happen instantaneously.
That's good. And the idea is on the profit model is that you're gaining Ethereum at a discounted rate, essentially.
Exactly. So what happens there is that the liquidation profits that we give people is basically calculated based on a formula, but we take people back to 100%, right? So we skim off the top. So what happens is, like, if you liquidate somebody at 109% collateralization ratio, then depending on the amount that you're liquidating at that point, the liquidator can keep 9% to 4.5% of that, right?
Right.
So it's like a healthy, like, let's say liquidating $10,000 worth of staked ETH, and at that point, your profits would be 450 to, I think at that point it would be like $900, right? So there's always a lot of incentives at that point for people to come in and liquidate, and it's a free market model, so for anybody can do it. So we just want to make sure that it happens all the time consistently.
Yeah, of course. One of the things that kind of came to mind as I was thinking about staking the ETH and earning earning the Ethereum from staking and having a loan, did you guys ever consider kind of the self-repaying model like Alchemix from the earnings from the staked ETH, as opposed to piling it into the value?
Yeah, exactly. So I think in the beginning, I think like that will probably come in the next few months after we launch, but we have already planned improvements on the UI side. So you could basically, instead of having to repay your loan of R, you can use the staking yield to repay your loan. So the smart contracts would automatically take the profits from the staking and reduce your outstanding loan size periodically over time. So you can always just click a button that checks how much you've earned from staking, swap it into R, and then repay the R loan from that. So your outstanding loan just keeps decreasing until eventually it goes to zero.
I
So
love
that's
that.
like that's like, you know, like another model that people just like, oh, it's kind of like a self-repaying loan in one sense, because the staking yield is being used to repay your loan. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's a cool model.
No, I love that model, and I think some folks will go for it, especially if you could set like a parameter, like I want to take, instead of 100%, I want to take 50% of my yield from staking and apply it to
Yeah.
the principal, right? That to me makes a ton of sense. In terms of, so got this architecture together, you got the system together. I'm assuming you're going through the whole audit process. Obviously, lending is a nice attack vector in this space, so I'm sure that's something you guys are concerned about. But then I think you have an even bigger job, and that is, right, market acceptance, right? So you're already doing the smart thing. You're not charging interest or fees right now. You're letting people get into this. You're showing that you have a stable coin that is 100% backed by staked ETH. Those are all positive things. How much work do you have on your plate coming up for like integration, getting protocols to utilize it, getting yield farms and swaps to use it, liquidity, whatever? I mean, that's a big job,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So how
that's
are you guys thinking about approaching that?
Yeah, that's a huge job. But I think before we can do that, we need to make sure that there is sufficient liquidity around the $1 mark, so that when people come in to use it, they can automatically off ramp, they can provide liquidity, they can do whatever. And we have to incentivize people to do that, because we all know how DeFi works.
Sure.
Especially in the early stages, since it's a more risky, it can be perceived, despite, you know, we're going to have a trail of bits audit. Despite that, people will, you know, if it's a new stable coin, there's always more risk to take on, because it's a new thing on the market. People don't know how it works, they're not familiar with it. So we have to incentivize some of the pools that we're going to set up in the beginning to make sure that people actually come in there. And we actually have like really big plans on this side, and this is basically how 90% of my time is being spent here, is we're going to use something like, you know, several hundreds of thousands of dollars per month to incentivize multiple pools, multiple liquidity pools. So
Nice.
this is to make sure that people can, first of all, leverage up on their staked ETH in like a capital efficient way, so that they're not gonna pay a lot of it in slippage, right? So it's gonna be
Right.
like if you want to get 10x on your $100,000 worth of staked ETH position, that's a big swap, you know, like it's like a big swap between R and staked ETH. So we need to make sure that we have like a lot of liquidity in that pool, so people don't get they don't pay a lot in the price impact part of it. And on the other side is like, we have to, you know, build liquidity around the $1 mark. And then how people do that is they pair their own native stablecoin, which is R, with another stablecoin, or with a 3-pool sort of thing on Curve, and then gather as much liquidity there, incentivize that liquidity, so that people can natively swap in and out, and put more incentives in there. So we're going to have incentives on 2 different kinds of pools, which will add up to a very sizable, chunky number. So that will be, you know, a very high APR. And then because of that, we hope that more people will come in and start minting R as a result, to take advantage of these opportunities to farm just by, you know, being participants, LPs in those pools. And that will set the foundation for the entire protocol, because that means that there's all this liquidity around $1. So you can easily, you know, if you want to mint $1 million worth of R, you just do it. You can swap out of it. You got USDC straight away, or, you know, and then you can take it out into your bank account, and then you can use it for real life applications, pay no interest, keep your stake ETH locked, and then use it in real life. And then later on you repay it, or, you know, whatever you want to do. And then this is like sort of like the first primary step, and it involves like, you know, bribing gauges on different platforms, using our own native tokens to vote for emissions in different protocols. So it's like a complex job, and it requires a bunch of different actors to come together. And also like coordinating the timing of this with the launch is like a huge logistical endeavor. So launching a stablecoin project is like a nightmare on the logistical side, but I'm sure it's going to be worth it in the beginning, in the end. So that's like the first step. And then the next step is like to make sure that people can use R without off-ramping to a different stablecoin, right?
Right.
And that sort of comes in with making sure that it has like real life use cases. So that's like, you know, a really hard business development job and marketing job to make sure that we partner with NFT marketplaces and people who take it as a means of payment, right?
Right.
So that they don't have to off-ramp from it. They can borrow R natively, and they can use that R straight away without having to swap it to DAI or USDC or something else. So it's like a big effort, and we have a lot of news coming up on that side. Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. And look, I mean, I think it's a big job, but I think this is going to be a compelling offering in the market. Did you guys raise a separate round of money for this project, or is this something you're funding out of what you guys already had with the other project?
Yeah, we are funding it out of the Tempus budget, but I think there might be an opportunity for us to actually raise a round once after we launch. So we'll see how that goes. But I think like for now, luckily we have enough funds to fund it out of pocket.
That's great. That's excellent. What's our general timeline right now for Raft launching?
So we have an audit with Trail of Bits that's happening right now. That's going to wrap up in a couple of weeks. I think like by the end of April. Once we're done with that, I think it's just going to be a matter of like setting up all the timelines and setting up all the pools. Since it's a stablecoin project, I think like the launch is somewhat different to other projects, because what we'll have to do is you have to deploy the contracts, test them, test the liquidation bots, set up our pools in the beginning, and then we have to vote for more incentives to be put on those pools, seed it with our own initial liquidity, seed it with our own R, and then ask for our partners to seed it with their own money, and then we would announce that the protocol is now live at the point where it has already like several $1 million of liquidity. And that's when people can come in, mint their own, and then provide liquidity to the pools, take advantage of the high APR opportunities, and then kind of bootstrap the protocol from there. So I think like that would probably happen at the end of May.
Oh, wow. Okay, good. The way you were talking about it, I thought we were looking at like 9 months from now. So that's
no.
You guys are going to get a lot done over the next month and a half.
We have like 20 something people working on it full time. So it's like,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
And what's the kind of, as you guys go out to talk to partners, potential partners for the project to have at launch or post-launch, are people skittish about stablecoins right now, or do they get it, right? Like when you talk about it?
I think that the wind is blowing in our favor. We have a little bit of a tailwind behind us because of all these events that have happened. And I think the first of it is like this whole USDC DPEG event. I think people are a little bit skeptical of more centralized alternatives right now. So I think like that kind of tilts I think that kind of favors us a little bit right now. That the other side is like security risk. Like people are always very conscious about like, oh, where are you guys getting audited by? But I think once we mentioned that it's like a tier 1 auditor that has never had any protocols hacked, right? Then that kind of satisfies them, and that's like a good answer. And if you have insurance on top of that, I think that is more than good enough for most people. The other thing is like the whole collateralized versus non-collateralized model. Like people don't want to hear anything about the UST sort of stuff, but obviously it's a whole different model. Like we have stake ETH backing over collateralized stablecoins, so the risks are completely different than something like with the the whole Terra USD stuff. So
Right.
Once people get comfortable with all these facts, then at that point it becomes a different conversation altogether, right? Because
Sure.
then they're like happy with the whole model and the way that we thought about it and all the research that we've done, and then we show them the docs that we have, which are extremely comprehensive. So I think like that, based on that, people do get satisfied that this is a legitimate project. And then also like we make it easier for people by having no borrowing fee in the beginning. So you only pay the gas fee, you can try it out, and you can make money if you want, you can farm for 5 days, use R for whatever, and then repay the loan. You tried it out, and then you're good to go. So I think like we try to remove all of the barriers out of people's way to make sure that it actually takes off, and then it will be used.
That's great. Do you guys envision taking on other staked ETH protocols?
So we do have the option to add other kinds of collateral later. I think like we're leaning on the staked ETH as the primary collateral, as the only collateral for now, because I think it's a number 8 coin by market cap at this point. So there's like more than $11 billion of staked ETH that's being circulated right now. So I think like that by itself is more than sufficient to bootstrap the protocol. Although in the future, I think we will have the opportunity to, on the smart contract side at least, to add other types of collateral later, which could be other types of staked ETH as well. So I think that will come later, and it will depend on what people decide and what people want, and also our own assessments about like decentralization risk and volume and price feeds and everything else. I think it needs to be a very careful discussion when we onboard different types of collateral for any stablecoin project, and let alone this one, which we're extremely like security conscious about.
Yeah, actually, I meant in terms of, you guys aren't providing the staking mechanism, right? You're just taking deposits of staked tokens into the protocol. And so what I was really getting at was, there's probably, I don't know, I've seen 7 to 10 new protocols that are doing staked ETH in different ways, EtherFi, Swell, those kinds of guys. Will you be taking their tokens as collateral of staked ETH in the protocol?
Yeah, I think that remains to be seen. I think, we'll have to discuss with those individual teams. And if we do decide to take on board different types of collateral, then we do want to see, at least some sort of incentives being contributed by those protocols. Because I think
Makes sense.
the system itself is beneficial to their users, because there's no other alternative way that people can leverage up this easily and this fast and with this much liquidity. So it basically improves the competitive advantage significantly for a certain type of staked ether compared to other ones if we integrate with them. So it's going to be a conversation with those teams, and we also have to be comfortable with them, and they have to be comfortable with us. And then we'll see.
No, look, I think the reason I brought it up is for me, it's the low hanging fruit, right? It's like, it makes sense for them, and they'll be motivated, I think, to integrate. So
and I think like another thing is like sooner or later we'll probably integrate native ETH as well, in addition to staked ETH.
Okay.
Because that's like it caters to a different audience who doesn't want to stake, who don't want to stake their ETH for whatever reason for a few days, because then they have to withdraw it, right? Which can take up to a week, and they don't want to swap it through Curve or something like that. So if you just want to borrow against ETH on the same terms as the staked ETH holders, by all means, it adds no risk on our side. Like, obviously has more liquidity. So if you want to do that, you can obviously do that. So I think that will be another use case later on.
Nice. And Ethereum only, or do you envision someday deploying this onto another chain and utilizing their staking mechanisms?
I think there could be we could have a discussion about it on different chains. Personally, I don't really see too much adoption in other staking derivatives right now, other than Ethereum. And I think Ethereum is going to dominate the volumes, the headlines, the liquidity, and outstripping any other staking protocols. If you look at like the Lido numbers, I think like more than 99% of their liquidity is staked ETH. And there is some liquidity in like, Polygon stake tokens and stuff like that, but it's like a very negligible number. It's basically like $50 million versus like $11 billion. So we don't see that much. Yeah,
it's not maybe not necessarily worth all the work. Yeah.
No, let's see. I mean, it's a conversation to be had. I think like if we were going to bring this to another EVM chain, which is a standalone chain, and they have their own staking mechanism, and there's like a good working staking derivative there, and if this model is actually validated after we launch, by all means, we can expand across multiple chains and bring different versions of R backed by different versions of staked tokens backed by another network somewhere else later. But we have to see where the adoption is.
I could. The reason I brought it up is I could definitely see other chains being wanting it, because it's a great incentive, right? For their chain security, their network, their growth. Having a mechanism like this that could be tied into staking would be pretty powerful.
Yeah, I agree. But also like in general, like even if it's not a staking derivative, it's just a native token of any other network that is used to, for gas fees or whatever else. And maybe later on, we're going to have separate tokens for L2s, right? So maybe the tokens that are actually used for gas payments instead of using ETH, for example.
Right.
So let's say there's another EVM chain and they use their own native token as the fee payment mechanism. Then we can consider integrating that and then deploying an L2 native coin into that ecosystem. So there's no bridge risk there. You use the native coin that's used for payments. And then maybe there's going to be a staking version of that, so you can integrate with that as well. I think the key here is that to choose collateral that are both capital efficient and decentralized, and to make sure that we don't rely on any of these other alternatives that are centralized, and just steer clear of the USDC backed crypto collateralized stablecoins, because at that point, what are we doing?
Yeah, exactly. What's the point? Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah.
In terms of getting engaged with what you guys are doing, are you guys hiring? Are people joining the community? I'm assuming there's no like governance token necessary for this project. So
No, there isn't one. I think like what we're doing is we are expanding the team, but we're being like kind of cautious. I think one of the things that I've been proud about is like we haven't actually decreased the team size since the start of the bear market, and nobody has actually left the team. So I think like the team and the investors are very much on board with the vision that we have, and then we're kind of managed to build through this entire bull market with like full steam ahead.
Yeah.
And finally we're going to come out of it with like some tangible results like very soon. So it's good to see,
What were those conversations like? If you don't mind me asking, you don't have to disclose them if you don't want to, but I'm just kind of curious what the conversations were like with your original investors, right? For this pivot. I mean, I got to believe at some point they were all kind of saying, okay, bear market, this thing's not going to drive a whole lot of growth right now. So they were probably looking for.
You would be surprised. You would be surprised.
Really?
I think like we are in a very lucky position. I mean, I'm the kind of person who, the investors can have a conversation with them, but ultimately we decide what we do, right? So even if they say, oh, I prefer if you build this, like, no, we're building this. So there's really not much say they have in that. And also like, obviously we take their opinions on board, but they were luckily extremely supportive as well. So they were not like, oh, you have to keep working on this that has no product market fit and just keep pushing it. Maybe something will happen, and don't write something off that you worked so long on. No, they were like, okay, we're fully with you guys. If you think this is the best thing to do, we're behind this, and happy that you guys are doing this. We think it's a great idea, and let's go and let's see how we can help you. So I think like from our perspective, we were in a very lucky position with the investors. I know a lot of other teams who are not in the same shoes because the investors are like, oh, you started building this, we invested in this kind of project, we don't want to have exposure to that one. And I can kind of see from some perspective why that is, because a lot of teams who decide to pivot, the investors end up having a conflict with one of their existing portfolio companies.
Sure.
And then suddenly like there's sort of a conflict there. So they kind of have to put up like barriers, but eventually that always happens. So there's really no way as an investor to prevent that sort of situation. So I think like if you're a founder or somebody listening to this, like just feel free to go for whatever you feel is the best thing to do, because I think the people who are building are the best ones to know, and it's not necessarily the investors who know like what is their need for right now. I think it should always be driven by the team.
Well, that's great. You hit my last question, which is advice for other founders. So that was a good all in on that.
Nice.
And frankly, if I were an investor, I would want you doing this, right? I mean, when I'm looking at a protocol, here's the bonus for me as an investor, right? Got this protocol that's built, bull market returns, this thing's going to blow up.
Yeah.
And you're building a product that can tie in to what that is, and you're building a product that's needed in the space, and you're repurposing the team that you've built that obviously is pretty loyal to the project overall, and filling a need that's actually really exciting right now, stablecoins and staked Ethereum. So from my perspective, if I'm an investor, I'd be more shocked about the investors that are like, no, don't mess with that, unless there was a conflict. I get the conflict argument, but
I agree with that. I think like it also is important to point out that at this point, especially investors who come in at like seed stage or like pre-series A or like some sort of smaller round like that, they invest in the founders, they invest in the team.
Right.
They don't really invest in a specific product. They're like, okay, these guys are smart, they can figure it out, here's our money, take it, and then build something cool, and we trust you. Yeah. You have your own judgment, and then we're familiar with your thought process. So if you think that this is the way to go, like we're behind it. So I kind of respect that.
I think I would actually welcome it in their shoes, because so few will pivot in this space, right? Yeah. So right. Yeah. They just watch a zombie project as they
it's true. Yeah.
hope they don't abandon it completely.
Yeah,
exactly.
And then the hope, and then pray that the bull market will return, and then hopefully they can exit. Yeah.
I'd be like, yes, thank you, David. Thank you for doing something. Appreciate it. That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
That's fantastic, man. website address people should go to? Is there some way to get notified when you guys are getting close to launch? Join a Discord or what?
Yeah. I think it's just keep an eye on raft.fi, which is our website, and then follow the Raft Twitter. Give us a like. Join our Discord. I think it's Raft_fi is our Twitter, so you can keep in touch with all the developments there. I'm also pretty active on Twitter, so you can follow me as well. I also tweet a lot about Raft and all sorts of developments in DeFi as well.
That's excellent. I'm excited for this thing. I want to get in there and earn some of those sweet APRs and leverage some of my staking. So that's great, man. I'm excited for you guys. Congrats on this. Looking forward to it.
Thanks so much. Yeah, it's great to talk to you, Brad. Always.
You too, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you.